Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate, with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Shawn Allen. Shawn, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Again, my name's Shawn Allen. I'm an investor here in Ontario and Canada, mainly focusing on flips right now, but also do other variations of real estate investing, so rentals, and we're actually getting into some real estate development right now. But flips and wholesales are our main sort of course of action right now. I've been doing it full time for about 5 years. I worked 18 years in human resources in corporate life before that. And that's me in a nutshell. I got a wife, 2 young boys.
So you were doing a presentation, and I wanted to go see it, and I didn't get to go see it. So now I want to try and get the condensed version, all the meat, and none of the fluff, if there was any. And so just tell me about your presentation, and I'll cut you off throughout to ask you questions.
Yeah, so you're talking about the flipping 101, basically, is what it was. So the meat of the presentation really was kind of not really, how do you flip a house? Because, that sort of, it's pretty basic. Everyone knows, okay, you paint, right? You put in flooring. That sort of stuff is pretty easy. You can find that anywhere on the internet. But I was more talking about, how do you find deals? How do you sort of fund those deals? For example, we talked about how to find deals. So people are always complaining there's no deals out there. You can't find anything. And we're constantly buying things at 40 to 60 cents on the dollar, which seems unreal to most people, but there's plenty of those deals out there if you know how to uncover them. And one of the things that it spoke about that was pretty interesting, I think, to most is that it's not necessarily that you're finding those deals, but that you're making them, right? So if you can find something, I'll give you an example. Find something on MLS. Right? So I found a property which actually had 3 different houses on it on the commercial side. The 3 of the houses were residential, but because they were on the same lot, they ended up putting them on the commercial MLS and putting it out that way. So I think a lot of people bypass that and miss the opportunity to see what that could be.
Is that going to make your financing a mess? Is it something that you're going to have to get commercial financing for?
Well, I don't get conventional financing for pretty much anything right now. We use private investors for all of our deals. So regardless of what it's categorized as right now, it doesn't matter to me. What really matters to me is what's the end game? What can I do with that property? So the purpose is, to find that we found that property. It was in the wrong sort of segment, so a lot of people bypassed it. It looked really terrible on the outside, but if you dug a little bit deeper, I was able to find a really good deal. I'm just going to have to, redo the way that it's set up and turn it into residential and sever the lots and stuff. So at that point, then it just becomes residential lots, and you're reselling them as residential.
That makes a lot of sense.
They're just talking about that's just one way, right? So you're not necessarily, that just doesn't fall into your lap because you found it on MLS and everyone else missed it, but you're making a deal, right? You're taking something that doesn't look like it's formulated one way, and then you're rearranging it to work for you. Right, and then I think that's a lot of times you can find those on MLS and privately, but that's making a deal instead of finding it, right?
Do you have any other examples of that?
You can repurpose a lot of different properties. I think something that might have been a duplex, you can turn it into a single family, vice versa. Yeah. Commercial back into residential into commercial. I think there's just different ways. You have to be very creative, right? So when you're looking for stuff, you have to keep your eyes open and your sort of mind open as well too, instead of just sort of going through each and every property. So one of the other things that we talked about was how do we, because I do such a big volume, if you're doing say 30 properties a year as a flip, how many houses are you actually looking at, right? Because if you put it in a funnel to get 30 out, like, are you looking at 200, 300, 500 houses? And the best way to do that is to, cipher through the majority of the houses that you can before you have to actually go and look at one, right? So when we look at something, we want to make sure that we can get it at 40 to 60 cents on the dollar before we even go look at it.
Worry that I'm thinking about whenever I'm doing that is that you might like just sift past some of the good deals. I have the same problem because I get overwhelmed with emails for deals. Maybe give me some tips. How do I get through all these emails? How do I sift these down so I'm not wasting so much time like trying to go through all these?
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to always be 100%, right? You're going to miss things. It's just no matter what industry you're in, you're going to miss stuff as you siphon through. But I don't know how to help you with emails. We're talking about like MLS deals and deals that come through, right?
Sorry, but mine's a little different because I'm using wholesalers, so I get all these emails. Yeah, but it's got to be similar, right?
Well, and I think if you just have to have a formula and stick to the formula. So if it doesn't meet that number, so a basic formula again, 46 cents on the dollar. Yep. If it doesn't meet that number based on the ARV, then I'm not looking at it. Numbers don't lie, right? So you can't force something to work if it doesn't actually make the numbers work.
I found a couple tricks like to make numbers work is to try and like just seller financing or getting some sort of way to if they were interested in interest only or some sort of funny things. But besides that, it's really you can't really fudge the numbers. You can't. It's just if you can make them slightly change, but you can only do so much.
Yeah, exactly. I think finding the deal you use a number of different ways, right? So a lot of beginning investors are just all they're looking at is the MLS, or they're trusting a real estate agent to just bring them something, right? But there's all kinds of different ways to find it, right? There's MLS is a big one for sure, but there's also private deals, and the way to get private deals is you can go door knocking, you can do yellow letters. You can send out direct mail, ad mail, we buy houses signs, right? There's all kinds of different ways to sort of do guerrilla type marketing. Of course, real estate agents are good as well, but you want to get a real estate agent who really knows investing, exactly. Right? So the average real estate agent who is just doing residential homes and is not focused on investing really doesn't know the criteria that you need. And they might not understand. You tell them, I want a house 46 cents on the dollar. They're going to say, that doesn't exist, right? I get that all the time. Yeah. But you get the right agent that can help you and understands that, maybe does flips themselves. They know what it takes to get it. They can really help you with that. Right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the for sale by owners. There's all kinds of different ways to find deals.
Yeah, and even for me, because I guess I don't know if the term is lazier, but
it's efficient.
I'm willing to pay the wholesaler for doing all that work for me.
Absolutely.
This makes real estate investing a lot simpler. I can still find good deals. I can sift through a lot of deals, and I don't have the time. If you have the time to do the wholesaling, you can find way better deals than even what I'm getting. But I don't. At this point, I don't know, lazy or just shortcutter.
Well, I call that efficient, Glenn. So
okay, I like that. That sounds way better than lazy.
Hey, well, listen, wholesaling is great. It's great, but the word of caution on wholesale. So you really need, as the investor, just because the wholesaler is telling you that the ARV is this much and it's worth this much and the rentals are this much, you really need to do your own due diligence. And as much as even if you trust the wholesaler and he's great, there's still a difference in your mind versus theirs, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing your own due diligence as well. And that goes with when agents are bringing you stuff too, right? You really need to understand what your ARV is. That's your key number, something you have to really understand. How do you determine how much things are going to cost? Like, how do you know what your rental budget's going to be? And I think initially when you start and you're a beginner, and if you don't have any construction experience, you don't have any renovation experience, you need to either bring someone with you that can explain it to you and really break it down, or you need to have a really good checklist, which lots of them are available online, that can tell you that, okay, baseboard is this much a linear foot. And then you just add things up as you go, right? And just itemize everything. I can go through a house now and just make it, running total in my head. But when I first started, I had to write everything down, add it up, verify it twice, make sure that, and if there's things that I was uncertain of, I'd go online and double check, right? So you might miss some things, but you have to be really diligent with that. And I think that's the best way, is to just write it down and keep a running total.
I like to do a video too when I walk through with the phone, and then I can, because I forget that one room had wallpaper that I'm going to have to take off. Just like little things will slip my mind that the camera will re-trigger.
Yeah. So, funding's pretty simple. We use private investors, right? So we'll take funding from RSPs, from cash, and obviously they're getting a greater return than they would through the regular RSP. So it's pretty simple, pretty basic.
I was going to say, do you use yours? Are they the loans like secured, or are they unsecured on the property?
Yeah, both. So usually with if it's for a full sort of if it's for a full renovation and it's for a full flip, then the mortgage would go on title. Okay.
Gotcha. And I know, obviously, if it's an RSP, you're going to go on title. Because I don't think can you do that without going on title for an RSP?
No, you cannot. And it goes through a trust company, and so they regulate to make sure that it's actually going as a mortgage registered against the house.
That's excellent. I almost should have you back to do just a full show on that.
Yeah. The only really downside to, and I shouldn't say it's a downside, but the only sort of limitation to RSP is they only go up to a certain percentage, right? It's higher than you would get from a regular bank, but it's still only 95, 100%, right? Whereas, sometimes if you are buying a property and you've got an investor that is just putting cash in the deal, they can finance and give you the purchase price and the renovation money.
Where do you find all your private lenders?
Right now, it's I'm getting a little bit more well known, and people know who I am. So a lot of word of mouth right now. Yeah. Trust factor is really high when people are lending you money. So having a great track record is a great barrier to get new people in. But in the beginning, I really was just sort of relying on mortgage brokers to help find me people. And then it just spread out from there, where I would find hard money lenders that actually came to me. And you quickly get a network, right? And you know where to go and how to find the people.
That's the big name in the game, because no matter how rich you are, you're going to run out of money unless you're.
For sure.
And there's some recycling techniques with the burrs and stuff, but it's still that's what I do, and I have to let deals go by because I only have so much money to recycle. So it's in limbo, or it's in work right now. So I have to pass on stuff, which is.
Well, you send those my way then. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. I don't think you're going to want mine. Most of mine are down in the Alabama there.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Roll Tide.
Yeah. But I am still open to Canada, and I was actually I was thinking about going back into Brantford again just because it's so close.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Well, and as Cambridge and Kitchener-Waterloo sort of get up in price and get harder to invest in, especially for flips, if you're doing flips, right? I just finished one in Cambridge, which I actually bought from a wholesaler. Turned out to be a really good deal. So, there still is deals to be made, but there's definitely, I think, easier markets to pick and choose from. And
where are you located?
So I basically run the corridor. So I'll do anything in around the London area, so Southwest Ontario, basically. Yep. So anything from KW to London is kind of the main area, but I'll do anything really. Brantford, Sarnia, we're in Peterborough. I've done Guelph, so. We'll go where the deal is.
So being in so many different markets, are your contractors willing to travel for you, or do you have different teams in different cities?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Contractors have been really a difficult portion of the business for the last couple of years. Really hard to find qualified guys, really hard to find people that you can get into the mix and that will stay with you, right, and not jump to someone else. Yep. So we've had some difficulties that way, but I've hooked up with some good people that will travel a little bit, and then otherwise it's really just piecing people together.
So what else do we need to know? Tell me everything.
Jeez, I don't know. You kind of put me on the spot here. One thing I should mention is, what do you need to know? I think a good thing is really mindset, really. So I talked about mindset when I was at Luke's group, and talking about how easy it really is to find sort of the actionable type stuff, right? Like, how do you do a flip? How do you do this, right? But what it comes down to for a lot of people, and why they quit so quickly, is they just don't have the right mindset to do it. And what I mean by that is, it's really easy to, if you lose money in the first deal or didn't go right the first time, because you're learning, right, when you first do it. And it's a very difficult thing, especially if you're counting on it to be your main source of income, and if this isn't your full-time job. Or conversely, if you've got a full-time job and you're trying to do it on the side, that weighs heavily too, because you're trying to do the life balance thing too, right? So I think working on your mindset and, really giving yourself that sort of leeway to be able to learn and to, just to be more positive about it is a big, big stepping stone.
My first property that I ever bought went terrible. I did I was at the landlord-tenant board. We did a full eviction. The police were involved because there was stolen stuff in the building, and everything went bad. And I threw the property. I went and sold it right afterwards, and I was like, I'm done. I'm never doing real estate again. And then I sat there, and you think about it, and you go, you know what? It wasn't that bad. No,
and it's really difficult sometimes to separate the emotion from, like you said, just sitting back and what's the reality? Well, was it really that bad? Was it as bad as it was in my mind? And typically it's not, right?
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. I know you're another busy guy out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure.